No Ashes in the Fire, Darnell L. Moore writes, "We are the alive, the dead, lovers, fighters, movement builders, cultural producers. We are the everyday, ordinary magicians who learn to create life amid death-dealing cultures of hatred and lies. We maroon ourselves, and we birth freedom. But many of us are still denied our rightful place in the master narratives of Black history and American life. Even in these progressive, Afrofuturistic oriented times, our life stories and contributions are still refused. And that is why we must tell as many of our stories as we can. No ashes in the fire is mine." So, understanding that quote, what is your story to tell?
I've learned, having studied music, that who I am is not what I do necessarily. So my self-worth isn't really tied up into, being a good PhD student or being a good writer or being a talented musician or speaker or whatever. I think that people's worth is intrinsic. And so I'm trying to kind of decolonize myself in terms of thinking about how I produce as the way to prove my worth. But I do think that what I have to say is important, and I definitely want to be the kind of person that I needed to see when I was younger.
Peace, peace, peace. I am Philip Roundtree, and you are tuned into what's today's date? I was about to say July, because I think that was the last time I did an episode. Matter of fact, no. It was last time I did an episode was when y'all man's, not mine, Dave Chappelle, was out here wilding in these streets, and rumor has it he's still wilding in these streets. But you are tuned into the December 6th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. I am your host, Philip Roundtree, and the clip that you just saw was from my guest today. I was intentional about coming back, and if I was going to come back to Rhetorically Speaking, if I was going to come back to hashtag You Good Man, which this is going to be an episode on Wednesday on all the platforms. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you share it with a brother that you love. I wanted to be intentional with it. And so somehow I came across this brother on social media. I had no idea that he existed, but he feels like a brother from another. I sit and look at his content. I watch his transparency when it comes to conversations on his own mental health. I watch the realness that he espouses when he talks about masculinity and how detrimental that concept is. I was sitting there one day, and I'm not sure how we ended up engaging in direct messaging, right? The DMs, had to say direct messages for those of you who are not in the know, but he sent me a link to his dissertation. And yes, this, again, he a little lighter than me, right? But I'm sure we was back freedom fighters on the plantations, his folk, my folk. We was having conversations back in the day. He sent me his dissertation documentary, and it is entitled Eat, Protest, Lift. Now, I get stuff sent to me by people all the time, right? I'm not going to make it like I'm bigger than I am, but I'm bigger than I am. So people send me stuff all the time. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to get to it. Yeah, I'm going to check out this article. Yeah, I'm going to watch this. Because people, especially when you're in this mental health field, people love sending you stuff on mental health, right? Because you're that mental health guy. And they I'm just feel sometimes, right? But he sent it to me, and I sat and watched it, right? And I was like, yo, this is powerful, right? This is powerful. I'm not sure who he shared it with outside of his dissertation committee. I think you got a sale. Go on the website, go buy a t-shirt, you get a copy of Eat, Protest, Live. But I sat and watched it, and it resonated so much with me because I am somebody who wants Black folk to commune together. That's why I started hashtag You Good Man, the men's wellness group. This idea of scholar activism and being being at the forefront of talking about issues that resonate with Black folk, that resonated with me. And then, the strawberry on the cake, or the icing on the cake, however it is that they say it, was like, listen, this boy a power lifter, right? And that was me in a former life. Now I'm dealing with a little SI joint injury. But I say all that to say that this brother, Dr. Caleb Stevens, who is a, again, doctor, PhD. He also has an LMSW. So again, social worker. We here with it, and he also has his license in addiction counseling. I had to get this brother on here to have this real conversation because this is what it's about, right? This is what it's about. This is my, I watch Drink Champs from time to time. They talk about giving flowers, and I think this is the first time I actually heard his voice, and outside of the documentary. But I wanted to give this brother his flowers. I wanted to have some conversation with him because I think that his perspective is not only important for people who identify as men, not only important for people who identify as black men, but it's important for black folk in general. And so I welcome to Rhetorically Speaking, Dr. Caleb Stevens. Peace, family. How you feeling?
Hey, I'm good. What an introduction, man. Usually introductions make me uncomfortable, but that made me feel some kind of way, man. Thank you.
Word. See, that's
Yeah.
that's what it's called when you say, "Hey, send me the brief bio," and then you look at it and you like, "Damn, that's too long." You know what I mean?
It's the same one every time.
I feel you. I do the same thing. But no, what I said was true, man. Like I keep coming across these people, especially in social media, who whose perspective they align with mine. And I know that happens in social media a lot. That's probably part of the problem with social media. We only look for people whose views align with ours. But I find it so refreshing, and I find it so necessary. And so it's a pleasure for me, right? It's a pleasure for me to be able to reach out to you and you just be open and say, hey, man, listen. And it's sincere, right? I think your sincerity just through the DMs was apparent. And so, again, I want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
No doubt, no doubt. So we're gonna get started with just you, and shout out to Marcel Davis who's joined in live from the D. I think he's from the D. You from the D, right, Marcel? The Lions won yesterday, so Detroit folk, they all happy and excited right now because they got one victory. But shout out to him for tuning in. I want to get into just your journey, right? Like we see the initials at the end of your name, right? We see PhD, we see LMSW, we see LMAC, but who is Caleb Stevens?
I'm somebody that grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, where KU, University of Kansas is. I went to Bethel College as my undergraduate, and I graduated with a degree in social work. Then I did about 2.5 years working in foster care as a reintegration case manager. And then I decided to go back to school because my coworkers were doing it. And I was like, well, I don't want to get left behind. They're going to be gone from work. So at least I can talk to them in class. And so then I went and did my advanced standing degree at University of Kansas again, and this time graduated with a degree in social welfare. And then was like, man, I hate school. I'm never going back. It was the worst. I had to pay out of pocket. That was not a game. And so then I worked as an addictions counselor for about 2 years while I started doing activism work. And then I made the transition into private practice, and I've been working there since 2015 at the beginning of the year. Then I did a speech at the city commission meeting that happened to go viral, and people picked it up, shared it, bunch of shares, right? Thousands. And then I got reached out to by at that time, the chair of the theater department, Dr. Nicole Hodges Persley. And she was like, you want to go to school? And I was like, no. And she was like, I was like, man, I don't have the money. I don't want to take the GRE. I've already taken enough licensing. I'm just good. I'm not doing it. And she's like, we'll create a program that you can study and do the things you're already doing. I'm one of the chapter leaders of Black Lives Matter LFK. And so I was like, I'm not paying for it. They're like, well, we'll give you full ride. We'll waive the GRE. And I was like, no, like, I want to do that, man. I'm sick of it. And so then she was like, think about it. And this is a powerful Black woman. She's in the Theater Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. just brilliant. She runs the Just Off Broadway Theater in Kansas City, and I was like, no. And the way the universe works, it was like, okay, good. So then I went home. I was like, all right. And it was just on my spirit, honestly. I was like, who is this person? When people, just like you were talking about, when people come into your life, you're like, what? And you just can't quite shake them, right? And ever since then, Dr. Nicole and I have just been connected. I said yes reluctantly, and she guided me through 4 years in an institution that felt like warfare, in a department that is certainly not made for us. And I graduated with my PhD this past August as the first Black cishet male to go through the theater and dance department ever.
Word,
You're right.
word. Congrats.
Thank
Congrats.
you.
If I had a round of applause during one of the cheesy joints, you know what I mean? But no, definitely again, man, that's a beautiful thing, especially coming from the world of social work, and to take that experience, and I'm I hear you working in foster care. We know what that is. Right? We recognize that black and brown children are disproportionately affected by foster care. That's why I call for the abolishing of ASPA. But that's just me. Right? The
Yeah.
Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, for those of you who are not in the know. Right? And then with your background in addictions too, that even reinforces that point, and your awareness about how problematic that field is in general. So first, what made you gravitate to social work, right? As you said, hetero cis men like us, right? We usually the only black person in the class, damn sure the only male in the class a lot of times, right? So what was it about social work that caused you to seek that out as a degree?
Man, you ever go through your childhood and then look back and you're like, oh, huh, that was it. Well, and I said this on a podcast last week. I grew up going to elementary school, getting in trouble for talking too much. Look at me making money off talking. But talking too much, getting in trouble, just struggling. I'm diagnosed with ADHD. I lived that life. And so I would get sent out of the classroom. And when I had tough days or things like that, I would go eat lunch with a man named Mr. Nelson. And Mr. Nelson was the first Black educator, other than my only Black teacher, all the way up through my master's, right? Um, Karen Dixon, that was my first grade teacher. She moved to second grade and I thought she was following me. Anyways, but I would go eat with Mr. Nelson. And I was like, man, this Black man is like, he was just a man. I was growing up. He's just a man, and he was cool, and he was nice, and he was kind, and he helped me to talk about my feelings, and he reminded me of the saying that there's nobody like you in the whole wide world. And I was like, that's cool, but I just wanted to eat lunch with my friends, so there's that. Well, I don't know what grade I was when I found out that he was a social worker, but he was a social worker, and so I was like, wait a minute, and man, I was meeting with the social worker.
Yeah,
I
right. I
must
thought
have
it was
been
just a bowl in here.
I was struggling. Yeah. So I mean that was the beginning, but I've always, I'm adopted myself. And
Okay.
so I've kind of been involved in the foster care system kind of my whole life in one way or another. I had kind of my toe in the water, if you will. And so it was just I just wanted to help people, right? I didn't really know, what trauma that included, like what things I need to unpack before I could, healthily work in these fields. But I knew I wanted to help people. And so, you get to college, I played football, I was in three choirs. I was just doing all kinds of stuff through and track. Obviously, did not sprint. You ain't seen me, but that's not me. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help people, and they were like, "You got to declare," and I was like, "I don't want to." Well, it turns out that I, tried to cheat in Spanish class when I was maybe a sophomore, and you can't cheat in another language, especially if you don't know it. So then I had to study for like 8 hours every day for a week before my final, so that I could just scrape by and pass. And I did. It was a Christmas miracle. And I transferred right into social work because I was like, man, I'm not doing that again. I played
Mm.
myself and I'm done. I'm embarrassed. I'm out. And so I transferred to social work, and that was it. It just fit. It just
Word.
works. Like meeting people where they're at is absolutely who I am. It's what I want to do. And matter of fact, the times when I have felt like the least helpful and the most inadequate have been times where I haven't been able to meet people where they're at and hear and empower and validate their voice.
Word. And see, the therapist in me was about to jump out. I was about to say, "Tell me more about that." Right, but
I know. I
yeah,
know.
no, but it's real though. I think that's something that's interesting and something that especially as helpers we help others so much that we're not even cognizant of what's taking place with us in certain situations, and when we aren't meeting people where they are, or where we're incapable of meeting people where they are, and how that impacts and influences how we show up in different spaces. So no, I definitely understand that. I definitely understand that wholeheartedly. And you're not the only person who had difficulties with Spanish. Man, I took Spanish 3 times. Right, I took it 3 times. I failed it. I withdrew from it, and then somehow I got a B, and all I know how to say is "Seta la puerta," because I'll be
Mm.
yelling at my neighbors to close the door. You know what I mean? That's I don't
Look,
yell, right? I'm not a yeller, but
look.
you dig what I'm saying.
Yeah, the person that I'm talking to right now, her family is first generation immigrants, and so I really, again, meeting people where they're at. I decided to, download Duolingo Plus and learn Spanish so that I can communicate with people because, I want to be able to communicate that like their child is so important to me. And I care about them so much, and I want to be able to express those things. Like I'm gonna do my best to keep them safe, and want to be able to communicate with them as well. And so
Mm,
I'm learning Spanish, and it hits different this time.
yeah.
And back to what you were saying before, when showing up in spaces, right? Like I wasn't really sure how to love or be loved, but I knew that one of the things that I always said is that no, I'm helping myself by helping you. And that was like without trauma informed care, like that was the way that young Caleb was trying to recover
Mm,
and heal actively. And since then it's changed. Like I still feel I feel great about helping people. I mean, I like it. It makes me really tired, but I like it. But it's different now, right? It's not I'm not healing myself by helping other people to heal themselves, right? I'm in a different space, and that feels different, and that's super important, right? I got into it to help people, but social work is absolutely white saviorism, and so at the end of the day, as we dismantle that, as well as addictions counseling, as we dismantle these things, what we know is empowering community always breathes life, and that's what I want to do. I want us to be able to heal together, but I also want people to be able to heal individually without having to take on the burden of the person that's supposed to be helping them.
mm. Heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy. Listen, and that's what we're here for, right? We're here to be open and honest and transparent about who we are, right? I think about the social work profession, one that I'm extremely critical of, right? And I think about, my journey and how, as you stated, right, I was my esteem and my growth in who I was and comfort in who I was attached to the results and my influence in others. And so for me, I had to learn that was extremely unhealthy,
Yeah.
right? And so it wasn't until I began to do some, that healing work. And I think we say it's social media has made it so cliche, right? Where because it's so easy to say healing, but that shit is like I look at healing like I look at God. Like my concept of healing I can't even fathom it, right? Because
Mm.
it's that intricate. You know what I mean? And so no, I appreciate your candor with it. There's a question from the audience, Justin Pate, and we are going to transition into Eat, Protest, Lift, and your experience at UK in that department. And so Justin asked, did you ever experience an erasure to your heteronormative identity or feel pressure to conform within theater? And did your spirit flourish?
Well, I don't think that anybody's spirit flourishes in academia.
Say it, say it one more time, man.
Yeah,
Say that again.
I don't think anybody's spirit flourishes in academia. It's too antiquated and rooted in all the systemic oppression and inaccessibility. So absolutely not. Anyways, for me, look, I don't know. Look, heterosexual folks never get erased. That's just not real. And so at the end of the day, I didn't feel erased. I felt erased because I was Black, but then I also felt highlighted because I was Black, and that made me want to hide. Because being the token in every setting, I was the only reintegration case manager. I was the only intensive in-home specialist. I was the only person, a Black male in my class in masters. I was the only Black male in my class at all in my PhD program. And so, like, man, it's not a real thing that straight people get erased, but it is a real thing that we get lost in either caricatures, or this is during the time of, this is the the next civil rights movement, the next new whatever old civil rights movement. So then it became a lot of people asking questions specifically about things that make us very tired to explain over and over again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but I just never felt like I never felt erased because I wasn't supposed to be there.
Interesting. Interesting. I'm gonna sit with that for a second. But while I sit with that, just that, you talk about the experience there, and here we are. We fast forward, and for those of you who don't know, the ebbs and flows of the academy and being in, as a learner, right? It's not about learning. It's a war of attrition that I say all the time, right? Like, it's a war of attrition. Can you stand the rain, right? We're gonna give them the Boys to Men version, not the new edition version, right? Can you stand the rain? And that's really what it is. And so you withstood the rain, and that led you to create Eat, Protest, Lift. And so what was it about those three concepts that were so critical for you, and to want to do research on it?
Well, I mean, look, I was in a PhD program. I already had my own private practice. I don't need this PhD program. That was the way that I went into it. So many people get lost in academia, and especially what I've seen in theater and dance is that people, go in and give it their all and then pour all themselves into it. And if they don't get things back, then they feel broken and lost and disgruntled. And I came in tired and disgruntled, right? I was the catalyst, the fire starter. That's why they recruited me, because I was there to break shit, right? Little did I know how broken it already was. So all I had to do was say some stuff after I read them, the things that they said back to them. But the reality is that Dr. Nicole was the one that orchestrated all of this. Without her, I never would have. I would have quit after the second year, because what I thought was, hey, what can I do in real time, and how does this help my clients that I've had to cut in half because of being in the program? Like, how can I help my people now? And it didn't make sense until maybe the third and a half or fourth year. I was really upset. I was really angry because I felt like it was a waste of time. And because, like, academia is 100 years at least behind. And people are dying in the streets right now. Like, what happens if I can't meet with the client and they end up passing? I'm not saying I'm here to save people. What I am saying is that there's only 2 Black male therapists in Lawrence. And I'm the only one under the age of 35. Right. And so, like, that cuts off access. I never had a Black male therapist in all of my years growing up. And so the Eat, Protest, Lift, I needed to find something that was important that I could study that was helping my people actively. Right. And so I chose 3 spaces. The eating part, I started Black Brunch, LFK. And now we've been doing it for 2 years online, and we got people all over the world attending. And so that's a Black space, right? And then protests, Black Lives Matter, LFK. So there's that, as well as the global movement. And then lifting, powerlifting. I'm a 2-time drug tested national champion. Got all the Kansas State records. I mean, I got like a national record. Like, I got things. I'm good at powerlifting, really good. Um, and that's a whole nother thing, because why am I so good at that? And where does all my trauma go? Okay, well,
Mm,
that's how I work through anyway. So, all of these spaces, I wanted to see how I could create, protect, and uphold blackness and black bodies as we move through these spaces. Eating is community, protesting is community, lifting is community. And I'm black, man, and it's just so different than not being black and being in those spaces. And
yeah.
I needed to create something that was a love letter to us. I needed to create something that was vulnerable and raw and sacred. I needed to create something that I was willing to dive into when I had nothing left to give. And I needed something that felt like a breath of fresh air that would help me to scoot and crawl, and cry through the finish line, this
Mm.
program.
Word. It's so much that you said there that's worthy of unpacking. What stood out for me was when we talk about experiencing trauma and powerlifting and how we're that energy is, what how we're utilizing that energy related. And I'm thinking, about myself, and going from natural bodybuilding to transitioning into powerlifting, and thinking about the lifts. And for those of you who aren't familiar with powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, weightlifting is so much better. It's so much prettier. You know what I mean? As opposed as opposed to powerlifting. But I think about one lift in particular, like deadlifts, and for me, it's all about anger. It's about rage. It's about when I'm thinking about the music that I listen to, right? When I'm thinking like, I held two state deadlift records, USAPL here in Pennsylvania, and I'm thinking about the 678 and the song that I listened to before going out there, and it was the Jay-Z Frank Ocean song, right? And the words I can't picture, I can't think of the words right now, but that feeling that came from it. And I know it's talking about the ancestors and having to dig deep, and so I say that to say that it just had me in a place with just thinking about how we're harnessing and utilizing our energy out here in these streets. And so for me and for you, it's powerlifting. It might be some other unhealthy things if we're truly transparent about it. And then, how it's manifesting in our young people. I think I hear you talk about how is this serving the community, right? I know for me, when I left full-time work, and I was just like, I've been working with black folk. I was working in systems that needed abolishing, like child welfare and behavioral health and social work in general, and just these, they just need a complete overhaul, helping professions. And I just think about starting this doctoral program last year, and like my first class or two was when Jacob Blake was shot in Kenosha, right? And I've traveled to Kenosha to go speak at University of Wisconsin, and I'm just in class and I'm just sitting there, right? And I've only gone to PWIs, Kutztown, Bloomsburg, Rutgers. I've only graduated from PWIs, and I'm sitting here in this class, right? Fresh off watching another black body that looks like me get shot for no apparent reason. And I'm sitting in class, and everybody is just going about their business as usual, right? And I'm sitting here hurting, and nobody inquires, right? But I look at it as in a sense of I chose this, right? I chose this. I chose coming to this PWI where my experiences, although they may be allies on probation, that's not them 24/7. They don't have to necessarily live with the experiences that we have from second to second. And then I also think about, damn, I'm in here, I'm doing this paper, it's a luxury, right? I feel like it's one of those survivor's remorse types of deals, right? Where I'm here, I'm in academia. Like, fuck am I here for? right? Like, and I see what's happening with folk who are out here who are living and trying to do the best that they can, and they need somebody out here advocating for them and walking the walk with them. But yet here I am, right? And so, but then I try to remember that, you know, what I use this for, it has to be for the people, right? Because if it's not about the people, then what am I here for? You know, so I'm just, you know, these are the things that came to mind as you were talking about eat, protest, and live. And the reason why I played that clip was because we often forget, right? Like we often forget who we are, because we're out trying to attain, right? We're trying to get the accolades. We're trying to go deeper into capitalism. You know what I mean? We're trying to, but we forget the essence, right? And the essence of who we are as a community, as a collective. And I think that's what was so beautiful about watching Eat, Protest, Lift, where it's different worlds that you're all a part of. And it's important to recognize that. And these are all black spaces, even in the white space of powerlifting, still a black space with those who participate. You know, so I appreciate you for you know, giving the world this art.
Man, I really appreciate that. You know, I was thinking back about what you're saying, just sitting in class, just hurting. You know, when I first went into powerlifting and went to like a gym that eventually became my powerlifting gym, people would be like, why do you lift? They don't know what powerlifting is. They'd be like, why do you work out for so long, 5 hours a day? And I'm just like, man, I just need somewhere to scream. Like I need somewhere where I'm not going to be killed for feeling all my feels. Like, you know, in deadlift is when I call on the ancestors to protect me and be there with me. And it's the space where I feel closest to my ancestors. It's the space where I feel the most powerful. And it's also the space where I need the most protection, because, you know, you mess up a deadlift, you'll snap your stuff. And so, you know, but I just, as I was trying to work through trash masculinity and also this saviorism shit that social work breeds into people, that don't look like us, but then we are just affected vicariously. Um, I wanted a place to be able to cry. Like, you know, my song is Last Breath by Future from Creed. And he talking about, I got angels all around me, and you know, and then that's what I feel. That's what I need. And so angels turned into ancestors, and ancestors work through me in those spaces as I process not only my own stuff, but how I'm going to be helpful to my clients, how I'm going to be helpful to the community, and to get my energy right. You know, my ADHD brain be moving real fast, and I need to chill out sometimes, a lot of the times, just so that I can be focused enough to create space that other people can fill. And powerlifting for me, protest for me, community eating, right, for me, creates a space where I can just exist, where I'm not required to entertain, where I'm not required to perform, where I can just be. And so, you know, sitting in spaces hurting when nobody's asking, like, hey, I can tell that you're really going through, like, what can I do to support you? Not getting asked that question, agonizing. Never wanted that to happen again. So I created these.
And listen to you talk about it, it reminds me of, and I'm a butcher the quote, right? It's probably best that I have you do it, but I ain't gonna have you do it. I'm gonna butcher it.
Do it.
When you talk about, you know, this, you know, not there not being oxygen in the room,
Yeah.
right, and not being able to breathe, and so, and that's where, you know, for that situation with Jacob Blake, and again, they're cool people, right? It's we're in the world that we're in, right? We're in the world that we're in, but not being able to breathe in certain spaces is why I go to Uncle Bobby's bookstore here in Philly, where I was in there today, And my one homegirl, she's in a doctoral program at Temple in education. I sit down and it's a sister talking about a literature review and going through it. And I'm like, sis, what up? And she like, oh man, she like, she's at Temple, computer science PhD. Come to find out, we got mutual friends, Rashawn Miller in North Carolina, because that's where she's from. And so, and it's just like, yo, this is it, right? I can't get this at Barnes and Noble. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I can't get that, with Dr. Carr, that governance structure type of interaction where you really see me, right? You see me, and we can just exhale and inhale together. And I think that's so critical. I think that's what you're speaking to with Black Brunch and these other spaces that you occupy with Black folk, and the reason why I'm bringing hashtag you good man back for anybody who identifies as a man. Welcome to come through. I had a trans brother hit me up the other day, like, is it a safe space for trans folk? I said, man, I wouldn't run this shit if it wasn't. You know what I mean? But and that came from what I'm about to get into now, on this trash masculinity that we talk about, right? And having to unlearn, even though I wasn't, as egregious as others, right? I was still causing harm and inaction and not creating safe spaces for folk who aren't hetero cis Black men. So can you talk about just your and I just automatically assume that every Black man evolves, right? When it comes, not every Black man evolves, but when we talk about unlearning these tenets of traditional masculinity, can you talk about just your journey and because again, when you talk about, I see I saw the queer family on Eat Protest Live talking about it being a safe space, right? So can you talk about your evolution and maturation when it comes to this bogus ass masculinity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, I was adopted into an all-white family. So, the strange thing about that, and perhaps one of the only fortunate things about not being around my people is that, I wasn't indoctrinated with some of the Black stereotypical masculine aspects. I missed out on misogyny. Like, I missed out on the different, like, specifically Black ways that masculinity shows up. Now, patriarchy, oh yeah. Now sexism, oh yeah. Like, oh, Christianity, yeah, 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 yeah. Christianity that was definitely homophobic, oh yeah. Purity culture, oh yeah. Um, but for me, I've always been super sensitive, man. I cried myself to sleep every day of my life until I was 16, maybe, because I felt alone, misunderstood, not listened to. My anger was never seen as pain; it was seen as disobedience. And so, for me, I've always been sensitive, always craved softness. And when you were talking about that question, the softest place I am is in the gym working out. Softest, absolute softest, because that's what I've craved my whole life. And so, being sensitive, being extremely empathetic, being an empath, another thing that people say but don't know what that means. But like, I very much can can peep emotions and energy and shit like that. And so for me, my masculinity evolved out of, and it's active still, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out of homophobia, out of feeling uncomfortable as a Black person in my own skin, in my own hair, in my own body, out of um, somebody that physically could harm somebody, and somebody that didn't have the words to articulate very well. And so I was not out here like beating everybody's ass at all. I just would eat my words. I wouldn't articulate the things that really pain me, and it really fucked up my life for a really long time. I didn't cry from the age of like 16 through 21. And then it was like floodgates. And now I cry at dog commercials. I cry. I almost cried when you was talking about the deadlift. When you was like, you step it, because I'm like, I'm soft, man. I've been craving all my life to be tender, like to be soft.
Damn.
And I need it. And I never had access to it, no matter how hard I asked for it. And in the situations where I got little peeps of it, it was so uncomfortable because it was so new that I just moved away from it or
Yeah.
sabotaged it. And so for me, creating spaces where people can truly and wholly be, where the oxygen can be theirs and not what I give them. That's what I want. Empowerment, right? Um, Not me instructing them what to do. I didn't do it when I was a reintegration case manager, and I never had a family that I failed. Because when you listen to people and what they need, when you meet them where they're at, um, then you can help them to create authentic and intentional truth and their voice.
Yeah.
Like we come from spaces where it hurts to breathe. And so if it hurts to breathe, they can't do anything else other than try to breathe. And if they're still struggling to breathe after you're quote unquote helping them, you're helping yourself. You're not helping them. So if the goal is breathing, then that's what I'm gonna do.
Word, word. No, it's again, and this is why, I say you're just a lighter version of myself and you got the bonnet on. I feel like I need to go get one and just throw it on. Right? Now that's your style, but I'll let you have it. I'm trying to figure something out now. What's going to be my next one? But when I hear you talk about just, being tender, even listening to you say that made me uncomfortable.
Yep.
Right. It made me uncomfortable because it's something I'm still working through. Right. I'm still working how to be. And Lynn, I cried to drop a dime regardless. This was watching King Richard's different, I'm a father and what have you. So I saw a little bit deeper into it, you know what I mean? And so, but yeah, shedding a tear, that's nothing for me. But for me, it's a matter of just allowing myself and giving myself permission to be tender, right?
Yeah.
To be soft, to welcome hugs and embraces. I have a newborn son and I kiss him 1,000 times, right? Same thing I did with my daughter. And it's just like, I always think about the Nas line where he talks about, I name my daughter my strength, my son will be my resurrection. Now, for me, it's not necessarily my resurrection. He's not a vanity project. He's going to be his own self, but he's going to be able to feel, right? I feel at a deeper level, but it's in a way that I'm so uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Right. And so my hope for him is to just be able to feel and not necessarily feel the guilt, or if he does, get those external influences, that he's still secure in self. And I'm still learning how to be secure in self. Is one of the reasons I got all these fucking degrees, right? Because if I go get these degrees, I can, I'm smart. I trust my brain. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna intellectualize everything. But my therapist, Dr. Val, who I mentioned in the TED talk that you watched, or said your homie watched, right? Mm-hmm. She said, Phil, I know you can think this, right? Cognitively you got it, but I need you to feel that. And that was the first time somebody ever told me and said, Phil, it's okay to feel shit, right? And feel your way through it. So I can appreciate you and you being vulnerable, right? Again, I even hate saying these cliche words now, right? But I think it's important that folk like us say it and make sure we're articulating exactly what that is, and recognizing that, hey, everybody doesn't have the wherewithal. Sometimes they may just throw vulnerable out and they want to have the language to say everything. So I definitely can appreciate that. Princess says they went 20 years without really crying or being emotional. I can imagine how you felt, right? And so but again, this is a lifelong process when we talk about healing.
Look, in two things. Number one, Dr. Nicole told me, I said, why am I doing this shit? Like, I'm sick of it. Every day I would be in the classroom with these white professors who, like, we say that we are invested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then we'd be teaching things that are garbage. So she taught me, she said, listen, I would just go in and destroy all these things. And she'd be like, look, you got to learn what they're teaching so that you can discredit it and let them know what's missing.
Mm.
And I was like, all right, whatever. She's always right, but I'm like, whatever, dude, I'm mad. And so, then I was like, why am I doing this PhD program? She said, Caleb, look, you have a PhD and nobody can keep you out of any activist spaces. Like none of these white folks will be able to be like, hey, sorry, you're not qualified to be in this room. And I was like, that was enough for me to want to help my community, for me to like push through. And then back to what you're saying about, the softness of children and the tenderness of children. I wanted, like, my goal is for my relationships with my people, especially with other Black men, um, to feel like when a child tells you they love you, to feel like that. Because I don't think there's anything like it. And the reality is that, you and I know this. As we love people, we're also loving with our inner child, or we're not. And so, in doing the work in these relationships, my goal is to love you like 6-year-old Caleb would love you, with the joy, sometimes the reckless abandon, but the intentionality of, hey, I don't know if you're going to be here tomorrow, but today I love you and I'm so glad you're here.
Word, word. Princess says she knows this is for gentlemen, but this made her look at herself. Thank you. Your voices are needed in our community. No, thank you. Right. Thank you for taking time. You could have been watching Fatal Attraction on TV1 like I usually would be right now, right? But you took time to be here. You took time to want to engage with us. And so whenever I have this is so meaningful for me. This encourages me, right? I'm encouraged by Caleb. I'm encouraged by Marcel and Brent and Princess, because this is when we talk about this idea of cultivating blackness and loving on one another. This is another forum for us to love on one another, right? And so, in speaking, based on your upbringing, right, saying you were raised in a white family, how and when did you make this concerted effort to really lean into your blackness?
Yep. That's a really good question. I think, well, first of all, I found out I was Black and adopted on the same day in second grade. I was like, you open the book
Okay.
in class. Yeah. And I was like, it's not like my parents hid it from me or anything.
Mhm.
I was obvious in family photos. But like I opened the book and it was like, one of us is different or something like that. And
Mm.
I was like, hey, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I was like, wait a minute. That looks like me. I was like, I'm Black. Oh. I was like, I'm adopted. Oh. And so that was kind of the start, but it festered, like when I was in second grade or something like that, somebody drove by and called me a nigger, right? And so like this is a bunch of white college students, and I didn't know what that meant. Went home, asked my mom. She said that's just not something we it's something we just don't say, and that was it. And so ever since then, it was just kind of simmering. Like that wasn't a real good answer. It was
Yeah.
actually a terrible answer, and I didn't know what racism was really until I got to college. If you had asked me what a definition was, I would have had no idea. And so it was Trayvon Martin. It was Mike Brown. Like those were unfortunately the moments I became radicalized through activism. And that's a scary thing, because that sets you up to only be Black through activism, through
Mm.
anger and pain and rage and trauma
Mm.
and shit like that. And now I really had to work through that. I had to unpack it. I had to repack it because it hurt too much. I had to sit with, I had to mourn it. Didn't know how to mourn it. Trying to figure out all these things. How do we process through trauma while going through trauma, right? And so epigenetic trauma too, realizing, oh, I got that too. Oh, nice. So genetic trauma. All right, cool. Um, like um I embraced my Blackness when I saw that other people wouldn't do it.
Mm.
And in Lawrence, I mean, we're very segregated, we're very racist, but we're the polite Midwestern passive aggressive racism. And so a lot of people that'll smile and treat you like a nigga, right?
Yeah.
And that's so scary, because we go through life making connections with people that were, once Black Lives Matter started happening, these people were real quiet, then they became real problematic, then they became real hateful, and then they just disappeared. Um, and I know that they still run businesses and things like that in Lawrence. And so, I did a lot of this work online, started out online, and um, basically just exploded my own life, saying Black Lives Matter, and then sticking to it, and then sticking to it, and sticking to it out thousands, I'm guessing, of hours, talking about things like that, just to say, hey, I would prefer not to be killed, and I don't want to ever watch us be killed online again. And that hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And so my radicalization came from nothing into anger and rage, into me creating a persona, right? Coming into a persona of that's the person that'll say something. That's the person that'll show up and protest. That's the person that'll call people to action. Then getting so tired, right? So burned out and so tired. And then moving into a space where I crave protection for us. I crave things for us. I crave love for us. And so now I'm creating those things that have continuity, things that won't just end when I'm gone. If I'm gone, Black Brunch will continue. The people that I've met and built up and helped and made connections with in powerlifting will continue. The Black activists that I've made connections with will continue. The people online that I've learned from, Black women, femmes, and non-binary folks, the people that I've taught me to dismantle and deconstruct my absolute trash bullshit, right? Saved my life multiple times. Like I want to do things for us that we deserve. I want to create things with the privileges that I have, with the education that I have, with the giftings that I have, so that we can breathe. And I do not care about what white people want anymore. I don't care at all. It's always a choice for them, so I do not care.
Yeah.
I choose us, and I choose to spend time working for and within us.
Word. I think, as we get ready to wrap up, it's a Gil Scott Heron video that I saw probably within the last like year or two, and he was like, "Listen, once that they were asking him about the revolution won't be televised." He was like, they were like, "What does that mean?" And he was like, "Listen, when that light switch come on, like you can't turn it off, right?" And so, echoing some of the sentiments that you had, listen, when that light switch flipped for me, I can't even say when it happened. Within the last like 4 or 5 years or so, you recognize that some things are problematic, right? And but you're still trying to participate in this social structure and not offend. And you hear the terms like rebel rouser and all of these different things, and you're like, what, me? I'm just here to keep the peace. Right, I'm just trying, and then you realize that, like, look, I'm aware of that, or I'm not going to wear it. It's my decision, right?
Yeah.
But what this is bigger than me. I always say, this is bigger than Nino Brown, right? When Wesley got up, he said, "Listen, this bigger than me." I think about Tupac, in the Mortal Man, in the Mortal Man song, Kendrick Lamar, at the end where he was talking about, Kendrick was talking about getting on stage, and Pac was like, "That's just the ancestors talking to you, talking through you," right? And so when we talk about harnessing the ancestors and going from angels to ancestors and them speaking through, I think about me, longevity, and what I want when I'm no longer physically here, right? Because the energy is neither created nor destroyed. So I'm gonna be up in some. I was telling somebody, I'm gonna be up in some worms, and then be up in them chickens across the street at some point. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna still be here, and still, hopefully my son and my daughter and anybody who's come in contact with me, I'll be, speaking through them, right? And they'll be harnessing my energy. And so, with that being said, what is you touched on it a little bit, like, but what is the legacy that you hope, not fuck the hope, right? What is the legacy that you will leave when this is all said and done?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I want my legacy to be one that the people that interacted with me, that spent time around me, that laughed with me, that went to war with me, I want their voices to be more sure because they were around intentional and authentic love.
Hmm. Hmm. Heavy. Listen, Caleb, Dr. Stevens, right? Not Ray. That's a little inside joke. Charles, not that, but Dr. Stevens. Listen, I appreciate you coming through, man. It's a privilege, an honor to rap with you. You know, hopefully we do many more of these in the near future. How can I see? And that's where you lose me, man. We was good, and then you put the dog on the screen, and you know I'm anti-dog. You know
Are
I'm pro
you?
cat. I'm pro cat, man. You know
Hey man, he's just a big bear. I just wanted to get a dog that if I fell on, he wouldn't die.
word. So how can the people get in contact with you if they do want to cop a T-shirt? If they do want to watch the dissertation documentary, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, it's free for Black people. Non-Black people do need to purchase the T-shirt because it's unreleased. I'm gonna be sending it. We've already sent it to film festivals and just waiting on that. And in order to enter into some of them, it can't be published. And so,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if they want to purchase a T-shirt, they can go to lfkpress.com and look under collaborations, and there's the Eat Protest Lift T-shirt. If they want to contact me, it's at CS Identify on Instagram. I mean, I have a Twitter, but I don't know how to use it, so I do not have it yet. But I will. Look, I'm trying.
You don't want that place is nasty, man. That's a nasty ass place.
Look, I like Instagram because my understimulated brain loves pictures and memes, and I just can always scroll and get fresh ones. If they need me on Facebook or want to make contact with me, it's Caleb Stevens. So yeah,
Word.
I appreciate this time. I mean, I recognize people that are doing the work. I recognize people that have worked hard to show up, even and especially when we're tired, for people because of the greater good. And I recognize when people have had to work way harder than they should have to exist. And so I'm really thankful to share space with you. You're a powerful human.
Oh man, thank you. Much love to you, brother. Much love to you. Listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I could lie and say I'm gonna be back tomorrow. I don't know, right? I got to see where I'm at energetically. I'm about to go get on this Insecure Clubhouse so I could talk about my man Lawrence and how he showed up for himself last night. So, and you can catch me on Clubhouse at Sit Black and Watch. So yeah, I appreciate you, man. Until next time, peace.